All right, so we have here the list of widgets, which is currently a static piece of HTML document. We want to make this dynamic. And for the assignment, we had given you some data that you can use as a starting place for the dynamic content. Okay, and somewhere in here we have widgets. Somewhere, there it is. So let's grab this right as the dynamic content that we want to render. All right. So for this to work, we'll need a controller to feed this data for us to render. Right. So let's add a controller that can give us this data. All right, so let's grab this and let's create a controller that can host this data. Right. So let's see, for the widget list, we'll create a controller that goes along with this under a directory called controllers, and we'll have a JavaScript that implements that controller. So this will be widget list.controller.client. Okay, client.js. So let's implement the controller right here, right? Always as a iffy. So let's grab the module that we've been working on, the WAM module, and declare here a controller for that template. So we'll call this the widget list controller, right? Declare in a function of the same name. And we have here the widgets. There we go. And then we'll put it in a service where it belongs, right? Okay, so here's the controller, right? Typically we would return the widgets for a particular page, yes? But we're going to skip that part. We're just going to use this array all by itself, just as is. Typically, we would have to iterate and retrieve the widgets for that particular page, but it looks like all the widgets belong to the same page. Okay, so I'm not going to filter it because I would need to parse the page ID and whatnot. I'm going to skip that part. You know how to do that. Okay, so for right now, I am just going to create a local model that points to the controller, and then I'm just going to tie this collection. I'm just going to send it over for the template for rendering. Okay, so I'm just going to say model.widgets is equal to widgets. There we go. Right. Now from the template, we can then display that array of widgets. Just up here. Something like model.widgets. Correct. All right. So let's load that controller and declare it as the controller for this particular template, right? So let's go back to the index page, and let's create a new section, right? So we have page. This is TBD. So you work on that, and then we have widgets, and let's create a script for the controller, which is under views, widgets, and then controllers, and then widget controller. There it is. We loaded it. All right, we loaded it, but now we need to declare it and tie it to the templates. Right. So let's go back to the config, right, and uncomment this, and this is going to be the widget list controller. Right. So widget list controller, which is going to be referenced in the template as model. Right. So let's see if we re-render this. Hopefully, there they are. Right. That's the array of all the widgets. Everybody okay? All right. All right. So let's focus on rendering this depending on the data type. Right. Depending on the widget type. Right now, there are a couple of types of widgets. We have a heading widget, an image widget, we have an HTML widget, we have a YouTube widget, right, and another HTML widget, right. So let's see how this can be rendered, right. Certainly the heading widget is going to be fairly simple. Well, let's do those first. Okay. Let's see how we can manage rendering these as different types. Okay. So on the widget list view, okay. Let's see. We have here. Let's see the pattern here, right? So that's what computer scientists do, right? They find patterns and they try to automate things, right? A good developer is a lazy developer, right? We don't want to do things more than once manually, right? We look for patterns and then we code it, right? So that it gets automated. So all widgets seem to have this outer widget class, right? They all seem to have this toolbar. So that's a pattern we're identifying. It looks like the only thing that changes from one widget to the next is after everything that follows the toolbar, right? So in this case is H1 Gizmodo. Here it's H3. Here is an image. Here is a couple of paragraphs and whatnot, right? So that seems to be different across widgets. Yes? So let's first start with what's the same for all of them. Okay. So let's copy a simple one, and let's grab this over here, right? And let's use that as a template. Let's use that as a template. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that as an iteration. So we're going to iterate over this for each one of the template of the widgets inside of the array of widgets. Yes. So let's do that. So let's do an ng repeat of widget in model.widgets. Yes, right? And here we're going to display the actual widget object. Widget object. So if we do that, notice that that's a little bit too big. Let's maybe do a paragraph. There they are. So these are all the widget objects, right, that are being displayed, right? So we don't really need this at the top, right? This spewing here, okay? And we don't really need this stuff at the bottom, but I'm going to keep it around just as a cheat sheet, right? So that we know how to render one or the other. Yes? Okay. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so what we'd like to be able to do, right, is kind of make a rule here that depending on the type of the widget, I'm going to render one way or another, right? That's basically what I want to be able to do. Notice that they're all rendering their cogs and their thumbs. So that's working, right? So let's leave that. What we need to be able to do is, if it's an H1, a heading, then I'll render one way or another. Okay, so let's start with the headings. Yes, those seem to be the simplest. So how do we do that? How do we render one way or another? So one way to do this, right, is to use a div, and then inside of that div, choose one from several templates. Okay, we can put all the templates in this div, and then kind of do like a switch case statement, right? That would allow us to choose one template versus another, right? So to do that, the assignment gives you a clue on how to do that. Okay, of using ngswitch. So let's look at how that is used. So go ngswitch, right? And it has two attributes. One is ngswitch, which is the switch that would allow us to switch based on some variable, right? Just like the switch case statement. And the switch when is like the case, right? So whatever expression we use on the ngswitch is going to be compared against several ngswitch whens. And the one that matches, that's the template that's going to be used. Everybody okay? All right, so here we give you an example. We're going to switch on the type of the widget. See that? So we're going to go here, and we're going to say, notice that each widget has indeed a widget type, right? That's what we have here. The widget type, there it is, right? So if it's heading, we like to do one thing. If it's an image, we're going to do something else, and so on and so forth. Okay? So for now, what we're going to do is choose from different options, right? What we like to be able to do, if this is switch when, if it's equal to heading, right? Maybe we can put here a heading widget. Okay, and maybe paste in here the actual widget object. We still need it just as a placeholder. And there are different types of these things, right? So we have heading. What else we have? We have image. So we'll put image here. So this is an image widget. We can have HTML. So it'll choose that one. We can have. We already did heading. How about YouTube? We have YouTube, and this is a YouTube widget. I think that's it. We only have four types of widgets, right? So notice that if I render this again, indeed, it's displaying the text that we want. Heading widget, or image widget, or HTML widget, or heading widget, or YouTube widget, and another HTML widget down below. Make sense? Plus the data that we have. Correct? Okay, so let's deal with the heading widget. So in the heading widget, what I like to be able to do, right, is that depending on the size of the heading, I like to display H1, H2, H3, H4. Okay, and the size is where? Is the size attribute of the widget object instance. Yes. So well, we could do several things here. One of the easiest things to do is that I could do another switch. Right? I could do another switch. So this is an embedded switch within a switch. Right? So we can do here. We can do another. We can use this as another ngswitch. Ngswitch. Oops. Ngswitch on what? On widget.size. Right? On widget.size, and internally choose from several options. Right? We could use choose H1. Right? I want to display H1 if ngswitch when matches 1. Right? And what do I want to display here? I want to display the text. Right? I want to display the widget.text. Right? And have 6 of these. Right? And this will be 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 if this is equal to 2, or equal to 3, or equal to 4, 5, or 6. None of the other will show. Right? None of the other ones will actually make it into the DOM. Right? They will be removed, okay, from the DOM. It will only be added to the DOM if the switch size matches the switch when attribute. Okay. So if we do that, notice that indeed Gizmodo and Lorem Ipsum and Gizmodo here seem to be working, right? And so those seem to be working fine. If we inspect these, right, we'll notice that only H2 made it to the DOM. All the other ones are not even part of the DOM. See that? It adds some metadata here to know that they have been removed from the DOM. Right? They never made it to the DOM. Right? What it does is that it grabs this switch when, it compiles it in JavaScript, and then it uses that as a template to then be added dynamically into the DOM. Right? So it never actually makes it into the DOM. Make sense? So notice that here's H2 for above. Okay, that's H2. For the one here, I believe it's H4. Yeah, H4, but all the other ones are not in there. Everybody okay? All right. How about the image? Let's do the image. Let's see. So here's image. And so for the image, let's see what do we have. For the image, we have the URL. Okay. And what else do we have? We have the width. I think that's it. Okay. Probably the URL is the only part that we really care about. Okay. So let's see. So what we want to be able to do here is we want an IMG. Okay, we want an image. And that image is going to have a source, src, which is going to be dynamic. Yes? And that is going to be where? Is going to be inside of the widget.url. Right? That attribute is going to hold the URL that I want. Everybody okay? All right. Okay, so let's see that. Let's render that. And the image is not quite working, right? If we Lorem ipsum is forbidden. What? What means forbidden? Why would that be forbidden? Is yours showing? Oh, looks like my VPN is blocking it somehow. Wait, can I turn that off? Okay, yeah, all right. So I have a, fine. Let's go back. All right, so let's try that again. Let's refresh. And this is taking a while. Yes, no, yes, no. There we go. We have images. Okay. So it looks like the size is not quite right. So we can change the width with the attribute that we have. I believe we have the attribute is 100%. There it is, right? So let's use that. We can set the width over here, the width, right, to be equal to widget with widget. No, widget dot width with. So let's re-render that. Okay, it's taking up the entire width of the page. So that looks great. But notice we have some errors here, right? And the errors is that, look at the URL here. It looks like it made a network connection. It was trying to make a network connection. Where is it? There it is, that URL. It was trying to make a connection to, so let's see, something that was assignment, graduate, something, 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 widget.url, something, 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 right? These codes here are actually the curly brackets, right? It's because the browser tried to interpret this as a literal URL, right? It said, okay, fine, I'm going to go fetch that image, okay? And the browser, the reason of this is that the browser got to this element before JavaScript got to it, right? What the browser does is that when it finds an image tag, it starts downloading it immediately, even if the rest of the page hasn't yet rendered, okay? Because it knows that these are heavy, they take a while, so it starts loading it even before the DOM has completed rendering, right? In the background. So what we want to do here is tell it, you don't deal with the source, right? I will deal with the source, right? So I am not going to give you the SRC yet, okay? So the browser won't try to load this. Instead, JavaScript later on will come back in here and say, okay, I'm ready. The rest of the DOM has been parsed. I know what this value is now. I can give it to you to start downloading it, right? And it changes the DOM so that it adds the SRC attribute dynamically to the DOM to start downloading it, right? So when we come back here, notice that now we don't have any errors, okay? But indeed, this is the same exact content that we had earlier. We have the ng source, and we have the SRC, right? Notice that the SRC, we didn't give it to it, right? Angular added it at a later moment. Make sense? All right. Okay, let's see, what else? Let's work with the HTML widgets. Right, the HTML widgets over here, right? What we'd like to be able to do is basically render the HTML widget verbatim, right? Whatever the HTML is inside. Right now, the HTML is there. It could be paragraphs, it could be other images, it could be embedded, anything could be in there, right? So let's try and render that actual text that is in there. So let's do that. We're going to say here in the templates, we're going to say I want to render the widget dot text. Okay. Now if we try to do that, okay, notice that the text is being escaped. Okay, it's not being rendered as actual little HTML, right? The characters are all being escaped, and they're not being interpreted as raw HTML. Okay, to interpret these as raw HTML, we need to use another element, another attribute called ngbind HTML, meaning I want you to interpret this as raw HTML, and I want you to, compile it as HTML, and then add it to the DOM dynamically. Right? So interpret this, whatever HTML is. Maybe you have some more Angular stuff in there, right? Compile it and then add it here, right? So this would be widget.text. Okay, and this div goes here, right? So let's render that, and now we have, it's even worse. We have an error. Okay, and it's saying that content, right, that is raw HTML, could be potentially dangerous, right? Notice that this HTML is not necessarily being, it's not definitely hard-coded HTML, right? So this is not HTML that a human being typed here at the that came from the server. This is HTML that is data, right? That might be living in some data structure, might be living in some database, right? Maybe as a field in some row, right? In some schema. Okay. So the way that it got in there is either somebody perhaps copied this HTML and pasted it in there, right? And now you want to re-render it. Okay. And by default, Angular treats this as unsafe HTML, right? Meaning somebody might be trying to inject some malicious HTML in there, right? Perhaps it has some scripts that might be malicious, that might they might break the current page, right? The current page has Angular, it might have jQuery. The HTML that you're trying to inject here might also have Angular and jQuery in its own style sheets. Yes, style sheets that might collide with your own style sheets, right? It might style your page in such a way that it might render it useless. Okay, so that's why by default Angular treats this content as dangerous content. Right? So we have to explicitly tell Angular that I am okay, right, with this HTML, that I have scrubbed it somehow, or that it has passed some policy that somebody has deemed it safe. Yes, right. So to do that, we need to use this SCE that you have here, right? This SCE, okay. We need to call strict contextual escaping, meaning you are escaping, right? Something. You want me to escape this, right? You want me to actually unescape it, right? I want to unescape it for a particular context. In this case, this is the HTML context. But there are many other different contexts, right? It could be an iframe. It could be an MP video, or it could be an MP3 sound, right? There are many different things that can be dynamically injected into this content, right? And each one of them needs to be vetted and say, well, is it safe to dynamically just include this? Okay, so let's deal with strict contextual escaping, right? So to deal with this, we're going to have to explicitly tell Angular that we trust this particular resource or this particular HTML. And there are a couple of trust functions. Here, trust HTML? No. Trust as HTML? Yeah, trust as HTML. That we have to give it the HTML that we deem trustworthy. Right? It says, yes, I trust this HTML. And then it's going to return an object, a wrapped object that says, hey, this object was deemed trustworthy. Go ahead and render it. Okay? But it has to be explicit through this, right? So let's do that. Let's do that. So this text over here, where is it? Where are we? ngbind, right? Instead of immediately trying to render it, we're going to ask the controller right, to trust this content. Okay, trust this content by using the SCE or strict contextual escaping to trust this, right? And this is going to return something that has been signed and says yes, right? The coder, the developer has agreed to trust this, right? Because you pass it through some algorithm that cleaned it and scrubbed it and removed anything that is dangerous, right? We're not going to do that. We're just going to trust it, right? But you would typically pass it through some libraries that would clean it, removing any potential errors. Okay, so we're going to trust this. So let's go to the controller. Let's go to the controller, and in the controller, here's the controller. We're going to add here that model.trust. And we're going to implement it here as a function, trust. Okay? And what is it going to trust? The HTML that we are passing as an argument. Right? So here's the HTML that we want to trust. Yes? So to do that, we need to use the SCE service, right? And we need to explicitly say that we trust it. Right? We're going to say trust this as HTML. Right? You are now deliberately making a choice that you are trusting this content, and you're going to return this as the signed, trustworthy content. Presumably, you have gone and done your homework of scrubbing the HTML, right, and removing any scripts or CSS links or anything that you don't think is trustworthy, right, and then passing it as a response. So let's see. Let's go back, refresh, and there we go. Now, indeed, we have the HTML has rendered. Just to verify that indeed we have trustworthy content there. Let's actually go to Gizmodo and actually fetch some content. Let's see. Game of Thrones. So let's grab some content here. Let's inspect this and grab that HTML, that paragraph. Let's grab that, and it's going to paste it in here. So let's see. It's this HTML, and instead of being this lame lorem ipsum, let's paste there some. Oops. Wait, I copied it. Copy elements. There we go. I think I need single quotes outside. There it is. Okay. So if we re-render ours, okay, there we go. We have today, yada yada, the Game of Thrones. Everybody okay? All right. All right. Excellent. So we're done there. The only one left to do is YouTube. All right. So let's do the YouTube widget. The YouTube widget is the same thing, because YouTube uses iframe, right? And that iframe uses a source, right? That is referring to a URL that lives outside of our domain, okay? And that iframe could be filled with tons of stuff that we don't have control over, right? That iframe might have its own scripts, its own plugins, its own, right? That could wreak havoc on our website, right? So it's going to be the same exact thing, right? That URL in here, we want the URL for that. We want an iframe here. So let's grab the iframe as a template. Where is it? There it is. Let's grab that iframe, right, as a cheat sheet, and we're going to put it right here. And this is this URL this is the URL that we want to embed, right? So right now, the URL that we have is, this is the URL, right? Where is it? There it is, right? This is URL. Now, when you embed a YouTube video, okay, they're all done. Oh, great. Let me Let me go there. Let me stop that. So there's a couple ways of sharing this. You can share it by providing an actual link, right, that somebody can come back to this, or you can embed it like we're doing it using the iframe, right? If you notice, the two have in common this last ID out there. You see that? Okay. The embed also has that same ID there. You see that? The URL is a little bit different, right? The embed URL is HTTPS, YouTube, yada yada yada, embed, and then the URL. Yes. Whereas the share is the link that you can send to somebody to come back to the YouTube page, right? But we don't want to use this. We want to use the embed. But if somebody is going to be including these iframes in our application, this is probably the URL they're going to use, not the embed URL. Right? This would be asking too much for them to actually copy this URL, right? Which we can then use inside of our iframe, right? It's easier for them to just copy this, right? And we just need to grab this ID and recreate the embed URL. Everybody okay? All right. And indeed, that's what we have, right? We have the URL to go back to the page where this video is hosted, right? So we need to grab this ID and build the source URL. Okay. All right. So let's do that. So it's in the URL, and let's go to the list. And what we want to do here is have that iframe, and this URL, it's going to be what URL? It's the widget dot URL, right? Well, not quite, right? Not quite. We need to calculate. We need to rebuild the iframe URL from this link, right? So probably we're going to go to the controller, and we're going to say model get YouTube embed URL. Okay, from the URL that we have in the database. Yes? So let's do that. Let's do that. So in the controller, let's add the functions that we need. Right? It's going to be here model.get embedded URL, implemented right here. So this is the link URL, and we need to calculate the embed URL. Yes? Okay? The embed URLs all start the same. The embed URLs all start the same, like this. Okay, so var embed URL. They all start like this, so there we go. The only thing we need to add is that ID at the end, correct? And that ID is it's right here, right? It's that last element in the string. All right. So let's do that. Let's say we're going to grab the link URL parts. We're going to explode this URL. Right. We're going to cut it in pieces. And we're going to say link URL. I think it's split. Split, and say split on slash. Right. So that's going to create an array of strings, right? Of which the last element in that array is going to be the ID. Okay? So we're just going to say that the embed URL is going to be, we're going to concatenate to it the last part of the links. So the last, so that's length -1. Okay? So now we have the embed URL, and that's what we're going to return. Right? We're going to say return the embed URL. Okay? So if we come back and actually run this, let's close that, close that, close that, and let's close Gizmodo. Let's go here and let's render it. So there's our image, and our YouTube video is actually not there, right? And if we look here, it says something about interpolating, blah, blah, blah. It's the same issue we had earlier with SCE. Okay? It's trying to take that URL. Actually, let's see if the URL looks right. There's the iframe and let's see, ngswitch. Looks like that URL wasn't actually added to this, right? It was not able to use it, right, to set it, right? Otherwise, it would have actually loaded, right? So it's refusing to load it, okay? And it's the same idea with we need to use SCE to say that we trust this URL, right? Even though it lives in a separate domain and is being used as an iframe, okay? So to do that, we're going to look for trust as resource. Yeah, there we go. Trust as resource URL. Right? We're going to say, instead of just returning the URL, we're going to say SCE, I trust this URL. It is okay. Go ahead. Use it to load iframes and things like that dynamically. So if we go back and re-render, okay, notice that indeed the YouTube iframe is loaded. Okay? Everybody okay? Everybody still with me? All right. All right. Let's stop.